So today I wanted to continue talking about some of the centralized logging stuff, continuing to use Graylog to extract the information from the logs that we're gathering, and then trying to make some decisions based on it. And I don't really plan on getting too far into the alerting mechanisms or the dashboard mechanisms of Graylog very much. There's just a whole bunch of content to cover there. But this is kind of just meant to be an overview of what a centralized logging management system would really look like. And then later on, once we're done with that, I wanted to take a step back kind of and just configure centralized syslogging. So using our syslog to do centralized logging. And then we're going to kind of, I'm going to think about some of the building blocks that we'll use for the lab related to the centralized logging. What eventually I want to do is you'll configure centralized logging, and then you will run a cron job every day or something, look through your logs, look for anything that's mildly interesting, and then generate an email report and send it to somebody. And in the iLab, we can't send emails outbound, I don't believe, so we'll just have to simulate sending an email and things like that. And I'll show you some things about email and things that we can do. But anyway, so last Wednesday we had installed Graylog. We had it configured so messages were being sent from, we had it configured on Ubuntu 1, and we had messages being sent from the syslog of Ubuntu 1 to Graylog, and that's all we had really configured. And for demonstration purposes, I'm going to call that pretty much good. But the two things that I want to look at today are sending information from Nginx to Graylog and actually parsing out some of the more interesting parts of logs. So that's for SSH, that's who logged in, when they logged in, where they logged in from. For Nginx, that's what was the URL, how long did it take to respond to that request, did it respond successfully, and things like that. And taking that information, having it parsed out, we can use it for our alerting mechanisms. Part of it, of Graylog, is you can build dashboards based on data, graphing how much certain things occur, how long they take. There's a whole bunch of different stuff we could do, and it's just kind of a rabbit hole, but I think it's very interesting to think about, even from a non-Graylog standpoint, how you would go about parsing out your logs and how they do it. And I think how they do it is very good. And we talked about this forever ago, but using regular expressions to do these kind of things is definitely how most people do it, and it's pretty much the best way of doing it. So hopefully we won't spend very much time on this, and I want to move on to kind of the other, again, take a step back and just look at bare syslogging without any of this log management. But anyway, so as I was kind of talking about on Wednesday, there's these content packs that you can install for Graylog. If you went over to inputs, or no, it's content packs, and then you go to the Graylog marketplace, you can just search for these parsers. You don't have to do anything to get them. You can just search for Nginx is the one that I'll search for. And there's this content pack for Nginx. You just click on that. It shows you, scrolling's a little broken. It shows you exactly what it adds. It shows you exactly what you'll get. So you'll have each Nginx log entry will have these parsed fields that you can search by, and then it will show you how exactly to do the logging. So there's a certain format that Graylog expects, and you can actually just go in the Nginx log file. There's no winning here. Trying to zoom, but scrolling is just not good. And Nginx supports syslogging by default, so you can just drop these in there, and as long as you have the content pack downloaded and running, you can receive that information. So let's just go ahead and do that really quick. You click download from GitHub. It'd give you this JSON of everything that you need in the content pack. And one of the things that I had said before is each of these content packs will have their own syslog ports open, most of the time at least, and you'll have to direct each of your inputs to different syslog ports, and maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you want all of your Nginx logs or web logs coming into one syslog port and being processed through one process. But we'll look with SSH, since we're sending all of our syslog to the main syslogging port. We're going to look at SSH a little bit later on how we would kind of get around that. So I just download the JSON, choose file, upload it. I think that's the content pack that I wanted. Yeah. Shoot. Click on that. Upload. It's imported. Then I'm going to click over here and check that and apply it. And now when I go to inputs, I can see I have some new inputs running. I have access log, error log, but you can see our initial syslog that we had here. It's listening on 5144, and our new ones that were created from that content pack are listening on different ports, which again is sort of whatever. So what we'll do is we're just going to go over to Ubuntu 1, already there, good, and go to our Nginx log or configuration. And then we go in server.conf or nginx.conf. And then inside of our HTTP right here that's where we put those directives. So go back to that content pack, find those directives, I'll just copy them out of there. Drop them in this file. So in Nginx, at least, we define a log format as, we say use the log format directive, then we say the format name, and then we say all of the variables that define that format. So it's just those variables are pretty straightforward, I think. And they also like to log specifically like how long a connection takes and things like that. And then finally, we use the access log and error log directives to actually point to where the logs are supposed to go to. And I'll change those examples to point to localhost. Close that out. Restart. And now if I was to like curl localhost, I'll just generate some traffic, hopefully. And there's, of course, all sorts of just garbage from WordPress. But if I was to go back to Graylog now, what I would hopefully see is, you can see we have some messages here, some data. So if I was to go to access log and show received messages, we would see all of our requests right here. Okay. So just show our user agent, how long it took, and so on and so forth. So, for instance, if I wanted to, so we can see we have this histogram here, and we have this nice little add to dashboard button. If, for instance, we were like receiving thousands of messages per second or something like that, or requests, or more, some time frame, we could say add to dashboard test1, and we'll just keep the default name. And then go over to dashboards. We could see how many messages that how many messages from the access log of Nginx that we had received. And we could kind of graph how many things were happening, and we could just kind of hopefully understand more about what's happening on our servers. The other thing that we could do is, it's not configured right now, but we could configure log messages to be sent from our servers for, let's say, CPU time, RAM usage, disk I/O, and we could try and isolate servers that had high CPU usage and perhaps deploy more or scale things up more. Again, this is all about intelligence and trying to think about what's happening on our network, and do the servers that we have, are they doing what we want them to do, and are they doing it correctly? So anyway, the other thing that I wanted to look at really quick was the content pack for SSH. I feel like it was SSH. And this is the one that I'm going to do a little bit differently. So normally SSH, it would start up a new port. So we're getting all of these fields being parsed out now. It would start up a new port, but I don't really want to do that. I want to just use the syslog that I already have. So what I'll do is I'll copy just this extractors right here. It's going to be a bit tricky to get the right amount. I might have messed it up here. This is the one that I want right here. Grab just the extractors from that JSON and go into inputs, generic syslog, and I'll manage extractors, import. And of course I didn't get it copied right for some reason. Of course I didn't copy right still. It all relies on me copying it right. But long story short, if I was to take the extractors from one of those content packs, put them on an input that's already receiving those events, I would get nice parsed out SSH login. It would say date, time, where it came from, and everything like that. So that's all I think I want to talk about Graylog for right now. But these centralized log managing products are something that are becoming very popular, and something that most organizations that have a handful of servers and have a lot of processes happening have, just because it's nice to know what's going on in your network as per usual. So for the rest of the class, I wanted to just talk about really quickly how we configure just syslog, our syslog, to actually work right. I'm going to do this in my my VMs over here on my own network. I do want to kind of demonstrate how we could send mail notifications and everything like that too. It's kind of interesting. So yeah. So we are already a little bit familiar with configuring these clients to send their syslog messages to Graylog, but what we want to do is specifically set up a logging server which receives logs and stores them. And the directives that we use to do that are pretty simple. We basically enable a UDP server, so we need to, there's a module to do UDP. We turn on the port, and then we say the messages that we receive, and then we direct them in certain places. So what I'm probably going to do is try and disable the syslog for this device, right, or this box right now, and then just use remote logging, so we're not logging anything from localhost. Or we might as well just log everything. We'll log everything that we see, and we're also going to log everything that is coming in from other hosts. So basically, I'm just going to put our configuration directives inside the main rsyslog.conf, right about here, I think. And we're going to say, at the very basic amounts, we're going to say these two directives. So we're going to load the UDP module and start the UDP server. We have all sorts of stuff running in here, don't we? Need to look at UDP instead of TCP, and we can see we have rsyslog running on all interfaces on port 514. And it's useful to do a couple, and at that point we would receive messages, and I think they'd just be processed by the same rules that our host currently has. But I think it's also worth to do these two things. We say we have a couple of templates here, and we make files for each host. And this was very much like our backup thing that we did. So when we had a backup, we made a specific folder for that backup or name for that backup based on the host name. And we're going to do the same thing here, and there's these internal variables that syslog actually interprets. And there's a couple different ways that we can do it. There's from host, there's host name, there's program name. We're going to take this approach right now, and we're going to set up these two templates for doing the logging actually. We'll just copy these. And drop them right in here. Let me put them above, I think, maybe. Okay, things seem to be working all right. Okay. So let's go over to another client. Let's add our direct all logging directive. So remember, if we say star.star, that will send all of our logs from, and actually I think I deleted something in here. I need to configure which template to use for which messages. But we'll come back to that and see after everything is configured. Never mind. I think I'm going to go and yeah, we need to use these two directives right here. And what those do are specify under what situations to use those templates. So if we see authentication information, we're going to use the auth template, and if we see just some generic information messages, cron messages, we're going to use this message template. And kind of the reason we want to separate those two out is because most of the time we're really concerned about authentication information, and the other information is just kind of tangential. So when we're looking through our authentication information, we can just see right away the information that we want to see. So I'll restart that one more time, and then go over to Ubuntu 2 here and configure rsyslog to send its messages over there. Star.star at 192.168.253.54. So this one over here is 55, this one's 54. Okay, so I'll just log out, log back in, and hopefully we'll get some login messages, SSH messages being generated and sent over to 54. Okay, so we can see in our var log directory, since we used that template, we have the host name that the messages were coming from here, hopefully. So if we see our own local host messages going into that folder, or Ubuntu messages, I guess, and then we have the other hosts going into that folder. If we look at secure, hopefully what we'll see is we will see the messages indicating when sessions were opened and when they were closed and everything like that. And if we were to look at messages, we'd see all of the other messages. And I kind of would like to see this one SSH message right here going into our secure log. But I'm not exactly sure how we would configure that. Let's tinker around with it a little bit. I think if we were to say auth.star as well, I think auth is one of those classes of messages that we can work with, if I recall correctly. And then I'll just generate some messages, try and log out, log back in. Yep, so I changed out a little bit there, and now I can see that that auth message, instead of just the auth priv message, is actually being logged as well. So yeah, so that's kind of interesting. So again, that's what's going to happen with those templates that were configured. A new folder for every host that is pushing logs to your server is going to be created in the var log directory. That's kind of interesting, I guess. So moving forward, what we might want to do is generate some kind of reports based on all of this information. So I'm just going to go look at Ubuntu 2 for right now. Let's say we were looking at secure, and we wanted to count the number of times that there were SSH logins on our system. And we might need to tailor our regular expressions or kind of greps to be better. The one thing I'm looking at right now is I'm trying to look for these lines specifically for SSH logins. And I believe there's two different ways they'd come in. There'd be accepted password for user, and there'd be accepted pub key. So we'd have to kind of write our regular expressions to be a little bit generic. For right now, the way that I'm going to do this is I'm just going to say grep, and then we say our pattern, and then our file. So I'll say just accepted for secure. And that will find all of the lines from SSH that said accepted. And we could kind of do it a little bit better. We could say SSH and then a number of characters, and then let's just do that. We'll do it kind of in a dumb way. SSHD. Then we'll say any number of characters. We might have to put grep in regular in extended mode. In this case, we don't. So we'll say the line has to contain SSH, has to contain accepted, and then what we'll do is just run WC on it, so that will count the number of lines. I believe the format of word count is lines, words, and then total characters. And then we'll just do like a cut F1, and I feel like the delimiter here is a tab. I can't say for sure. The quotes, I think. Trying to get just this number here. And I should be able to put the tab there. Let's just try space. There's another command that I could use to squeeze this down. I feel like it was like squeeze or compress or something. And there should be a better way to. I guess I could also do this. I could just say WCL, word count L, and that would only print the lines, and that's what I'm really interested in. So 1. So I could let's do this then. Let's go and create a little script that would do our log kind of parsing and kind of information about it. So that's kind of where I was going with this, bin bash. And then what I want to do is collect all of our stuff. Let's say we were specific. We're going to say in this case we're specifically interested in Ubuntu 2, and we're going to discard all the other logs and not really care. What I could do is I'll just all cd var log ubuntu 2.dsunix.lan, and then I'll capture all of my output from these commands. So let's say we wanted to know the total number of SSH sessions. We could capture the output and be like SSH count equals that. And we could be like, let's also look for root logins. That's another one that would be kind of interesting. So we want to say, we don't see any here. We see session closed for root. So let me just go log or switch to root really quick here. And I was like, if I was looking at it again, I'd see we have some new ones. We'd have a session open for user root. So we could count the number of root logins or something like that. So same thing we did before. We could grep secure. No, we grab session open for user root. We got to put that in quotes because there's spaces there. Secure or count L. Count the number of root logins just like that. So we take that one. Go over to our log.sh, root count, cool. So just a couple of things we could do. The other thing we have to do, so what my thoughts are is we'd want to run this script like every day just to kind of get an understanding of what's happening, number of SSH logins, number of root logins, things like that. But what we'd ultimately want to do is filter it so we're only taking timestamps greater than like yesterday at midnight. Let's say we're going to run it today at midnight. We want to take all log entries from yesterday at midnight and only take the new ones. And we had to probably write some really, really annoying scripts to do the timestamp filtering. So we're just not going to do that right now. It's just a bit annoying. So anyway, in order to send mail, we actually have this function called, or this program called mail, which we can install, I guess. Sometimes it's installed, sometimes it's not. apt install mail utils. And what we want to do for this is we want to install local only. So what that will do is, well, actually no. In this case, we want to install an internet site. So what that will do is we'll basically allow mail to be received by the system, and then postfix, what we're configuring right now, will receive mail that is addressed for non-machine users and send them to that particular mail server. It'll do all the DNS lookups. It'll do all of the things that are involved with doing mail. And one of the things that we probably want to do is configure postfix to only be listening on localhost if we're using it to just send mail. But for right now, I don't really care. And then just as a demonstration, what I'll do is send an email to myself right now as kind of a way of showing that. So we use the mail command for sure. But what we do is we say echo message through, and it's either mail capital S or lowercase s for the subject line specified here. Mail S. I think I'm going to try lowercase s. and we're just going to see how it works. Test1, and I say the username of who I want to send to. I think that worked. So sent the message, subject line test1 to me. And we can see right there, that's our messages that we just sent. Now it's in our email inbox. And we can see a couple of things are weird here, like it says root@root.ubuntu. There's no actual valid return addressed on this message or anything. And we probably want to configure like who's actually, a little bit more information about who's sending the message. But for a simple logging message where there is no valid reply address, we could just send this and not really care. So basically, my goal is to vmlog.sh is to mail every day this information to the user or the administrator. So I could just say echo there were SSH count SSH logins, there were root count root logins. And I could go to mail s. That could be like daily stats for Ubuntu 2, and then my email address. And I messed something up there. Okay, yeah, when I'm assigning, I'm just a dummy. When I'm assigning variables, I don't put the $sign on them. Okay, cool. So, if we go back over to my mail here, we can see daily stats for Ubuntu 2. There were 1 SSH logins, there was 1 root logins. So maybe you want to, I don't know, generate a table of all of the information that you're pulling from your logs, and then send that to an administrative user daily. Or maybe you want to have kind of a weird edge case like detector. You want to be like, well, if there were more than 10 root logins this day, or if there were more than 10 SSH sessions, or some other logic like that, and only send emails in kind of weird edge cases, you might want to do that. But I think that's kind of a good way of thinking when it comes to notifications and logging. And of course, this would get super annoying. And what you might do is, if you have these daily messages, you might just put them in a daily message folder, kind of an email rule to sort all that out. And if you're interested in what's happening really quick without logging into the servers or for archival purposes, you could just go through and look through your folder. But then your error messages might come directly to your inbox and you have to deal with them. So I think that's kind of an interesting example. And I'll hopefully have a lab, which will kind of just get you thinking a little bit about gathering information, centralized logging, and then notifying users of the information, and so on and so forth. All right, so that's all I have for you today. Still need to get that networking lab dealing with the NATing stuff, the DHCP stuff pushed out, and hopefully Kyle will be able to deploy out that VApp pretty soon, and we'll be able to assign that. And then we'll also see a I don't think, at least our syslog stuff, the things that we talked about at the tail end of today, that stuff is particularly complicated, and a lab dealing with kind of all of this stuff in that, logs and notifications and correlation of data stuff. So coming soon, I think I'm going to get into, or I guess dive back into, user authentication and some other authentication schemes that we can use to allow users to log in and control access flow in a central location. Because we have centralized logging right now, but one of the things that we still have to do is go to every single box and provision users, and that's something that we can very easily get around and have a centralized user repository, I guess. All right, that's all I got.